Welcome to the Humans of Fintech podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Casperson, and today I have the pleasure of sitting down with someone who has shaped the fintech community, Jon Zanoff, founder of Empire Startups.
Woohoo!
Yeah, aka the mayor of fintech in New York City. Over the past 15 years, Jon has gathered the New York City fintech community, running the largest fintech meetup in the country and mentoring countless founders. Empire Startups, which he founded in 2011, hosts the largest fintech conferences in New York, bringing together industry leaders to tackle the space's emerging issues. And today we are going to dive into Jon's journey, how he built the Empire Startups brand, and what is in store this year for New York Fintech Week 2025. Yes, that is right, folks. New York Fintech Week 2025 is happening, and we are going to continue the legacy that Jon has built and keep it alive and going. How's it going, Jon?
It's amazing. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Fintech Week coming up April 21st to the 25th. If there was any time to be in New York City, if you're in tech, whether you're in financial services, whether you're working on a startup, God, I mean, 5,000 folks from all over the world. I mean, friends of mine from Sydney are calling me, hey, have you heard of this New York Fintech Week thing?
Yeah.
It's absolutely unbelievable. It's truly a collection of the whole ecosystem. So stoked for another amazing year. And like the growth of Fintech's Femme is just unbelievable. So I cannot wait for your summit at the Time Center.
Thank you. Yeah, April 23rd, guys. We'll talk more about that. So before we get into your origin story, I really appreciate New York Fintech Week because some of my origin story with Fintech is Femme really starts with New York Fintech Week and you really being an advocate for a newcomer like me and really just like embracing me into the community right away, even when I had just a few thousand subscribers, or I just randomly sent Empire Startups a message like, hey, I'm a speaker, like I can moderate, is there a spot on stage? I really appreciate that because it was your 2021 event that I first went to. And then by 2022, you put me on stage. When I went to the first event, I remember thinking, I'm going to be on that stage with you. Like, I want to do that. I want to do what Jon's doing. Like, you really inspired a lot of what we've built here. So I want to make sure you knew that.
Well, listen, if I play the tiniest role in your journey, I mean, that's what gets me out of bed. That's what motivates me. You know, we talked about it a little bit before, whether you consider yourselves an underdog. I consider all entrepreneurs an underdog because they could be making more money doing something else. And they decided, you know what, I want to put something amazing in the universe. Mm-hmm. And so for me to get to play just honestly the tiniest background actor role in that journey, man, it's fantastic. So
yes.
Thank you.
Yes, you're a character in the Fintech is Femme universe, I would say. So I want to hear the origin story because I got here to New York Fintech community universe right in 2021.
Yep.
And have been a part of it ever since. But I know, you're the origin of fintech in New York and the community dates well before 2021. Yeah. Tell us about how you maybe first landed in the world of fintech before becoming the mayor.
The mayor. I mean, it's a hilarious title for all sorts of reasons that maybe we'll get into. But yeah, getting into it, I was actually an engineer. Not a lot of folks, straight off know that. I studied mechanical engineering and mechanics. I thought I was going to design race cars. And after 4 years at university, I realized that mechanical engineers don't get to design race cars. They get to design like door handles or a bolt. And,
wow.
That wasn't quite enough of the vision to really get me out of bed. But the interning and externing all throughout, I went to a small school called Lehigh University and it was internships. Every engineer I met with, now granted this was during the internet bubble, but all they talked about at the water fountain in the lunchroom were their like brokerage accounts and what stocks was I trading, and and I see the, Palm Pilot is IPOing, huge news, this thing's going to take off. And I still remember the nerves when I bought 2 shares of Palm for like $400, which was at the time 100% of my portfolio. But neither here nor there. Everyone was talking about financial services, and not even the innovation on financial services, just that this is the opportunity. This is how you create generational wealth. It's not sitting in a seat as an engineer. And was lucky enough, Lehigh, a lot of smart finance and accounting folks from Lehigh make their way to New York City. And I was recruited by a trading firm that said, we exclusively recruit out of math and science. And if you can layer on student athletes, that tends to be a really good mix of folks that are problem solvers, that are team oriented, that are collaborative, that think on their feet. And so I went from what was most likely taking a job in Detroit, designing cars, to Wall Street. Wow. And and that quickly turned into product management and financial technology, since I was the most technically adept person on the team.
Wow. Okay. What year did you land in Wall Street?
Oh, geez.
Sorry to age you.
I'm old as fuck, I think, is where Nicole is going with this. I'd like to we'll bleep that out for the sponsors. But yeah, there's when I started in fintech, I had a faux hawk, if that helps.
Wow.
Yeah. No. And for those that are just listening, you can just imagine me as an old ball guy. But nevertheless, I graduated in 2001. Okay. So this was 2001 was a heck of a time to go into financial services, because the Fed cut rates 10 times in 2001, which again, I don't want to judge any speakers, but we could look at the last 5 years. It hasn't been 10 times in the last 5 years, let alone 10 times in a single year. So the market was insane at the time.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. No, I asked mostly because I want to know if you were like before the Great Recession or after, or like if you so you were around during that time, because that's really like an inflection point for fintech.
Yeah, I mean, it was 2001 was not, you could say it about the job market right now. I mean, it was a terrible time to be leaving. We were sort of exiting a long period of something called a signing bonus. I don't know if you've ever seen that mythical creature, but it was like, what a weird concept. You were just paying kids to come work at your company. I mean, honestly, that's probably what the Goldman Sachs of the world need to do today to recruit talent. Right. We're just going to pay you a bunch of money to show up on the first day, but left that and entered into just a really quiet and difficult market to enter. But like I said, I was fortunate enough to be recruited as an engineer into finance, and needless to say, over the last 25 years, there's been a gold rush around technology, and so I had some. I was fortunate enough to be in positions that I was fairly future-proof, being a technologist in finance.
Nice. Yeah. So then at some point you must have realized that there was a fintech scene in New York kind of bubbling around, right? Yeah. What was that inflection point where you were like, oh, there's a real maybe community need or like gathering need? How did you kind of start that?
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be neat if I was that founder that saw a need and went after it? Of like, there was a hole in the market, a gap in the market, and so we came up with something that was 10x better. Like,
you sound like me.
I mean, yeah, because you're brilliant. I was, this was a long time ago. We were, we were dealing with, I don't know, it was simpler times, we'll say. But I think the big thing the big need from a community standpoint, interestingly enough, because you think of the startup community. I mean, usually when you say community, you say startup community before or tech community before. Everyone thinks about, founders and technologists. There's probably some ageism that happens, and you think of it as a younger community. But no one, trust me, no one needs the fintech community more than traditional financial services and traditional corporates. So at the time, I was working for one of the largest investment banks in the world. I asked them in the interview process, so how do you embrace the startup community? I asked, and it became like I was having so much fun in the interview, looking at the faces of people at Goldman Sachs when I said, "Oh, how do you embrace the startup community?" They are like, "I have no idea what that is."
What are you talking about?
Literally no idea. But what community does, and you know this as a community, and it's a little bit silly, community person nerding out with another community person.
That's what we're here for.
That's what we're here for. But the opportunity is, it is the absolute best way to accelerate innovation. So how are you going to accelerate innovation? That sounds fancy. It is a few things, but mainly bringing smart people together and people who've been on this path before you and learning from folks who've been on that path. I won't pick on my friends at GS too much more, but at the average, financial services organization, no one wants to be vulnerable. No one wants to say, we don't know the answers.
Or even stick their neck out, right? It's not really something they want to do.
Absolutely not. I mean, the vulnerability you have to say, to be like, okay, we should go out and talk to, 1,000 customers or 1,000 incumbents to really understand, like, how do we get here and where are we going? It just was not the ethos. So, you can imagine at the time, everyone's heading to, Grand Central or Penn or Port Authority at like 4:45 on the dot. No one, this notion of like, let's go hear from some entrepreneurs after work. Like, are you out of your freaking minds? Get the heck out of here. But that was the need. That was the need. And I don't tell that very often. I'll usually say, talk about some things that are true, that I had some amazing friends who are into entrepreneurship. And I thought that, man, could my fellow technologists within the bank learn a ton from them? But it was like, it was about the entrepreneur again. But it was truly about folks getting out of their 9 to 5 with their blinders on, making assumptions about, previous success is going to dictate future success. And that's just not the case. That's just not the case. So anyway, long-winded, the genesis was, if you want to move faster, you need to keep your eyes as open as possible and your view as wide as possible, and hence the meetup.
Yeah, no, I love that, and it really resonates with me, with my audience, and especially being so female centric. It's a very similar vibe in terms of a lot of the women that work at even the more traditional firms or are in the startup universe. They just feel that isolation. So they feel alone, and then it feels like they're not accelerating as fast because they don't have that kind of community or, those moments of being able to just, spit ideas out and make things move fast. And that's that acceleration you were talking about. And with Fintech is Femme and the Leadership Summit, I really, really, and what you've built too, I really love the way we're able to say, you're not the only in your room. Like, you're not the only one thinking this way or feeling this way. There's a lot of us that want that sense of networking and community and acceleration that I also feel is very unique to New York in particular, and our fast-pacedness of this city. So I really resonate with that, and I think that might have been what I kind of picked up on during the Empire Startups conference.
Everyone's welcome. I mean, that's one of the best compliments you can give after coming to an Empire event is that it, again, I'm going to overuse community, but it like felt like a community. Like, people were happy to be there. People were in good spirits. I wasn't, it wasn't like I was forcing my way into conversations. And that was from the start. That was a notion that, new ideas often carry the gold versus working for a stodgy asset manager or bank. Whereas unless you've been here for 10 years, you don't get to talk yet. And so, absolutely swung the pendulum. But if you're sitting in a conference room on a day-to-day basis and the most senior folks do the majority of talking, you're probably in the wrong spot. And the way that you can hedge and future-proof your career is getting active in the startup community to start learning new ideas, and where those new ideas, even if they're outlandish, are encouraged and rewarded. And I know that's what you've built. Just a tremendously collaborative, community when someone's day job may not be so collaborative.
Right, exactly. And I think it's in a long table, right? A very long generational table.
Yeah.
There are women in my community with Fintech is Femme who have been in the corporate financial service space for 25 years, right, in a similar vein. And they're getting to learn and network from the new early stage founder who just finished their MBA, at Harvard and are now in New York trying to make it happen. So they're getting that value exchange from each other. And I also think that element is crazy important, right? It's really, I think what you've done a great job of is that I'm just piggybacking off of everything you've done is, and building it for the women in fintech community, but is not being too rigid around what that looks like, right? Being able to say, you know what, fine, traditional corporate big banks, you can get involved in whatever that way is, because now they want to know what the startups are doing, because they have
Absolutely,
to of the innovation, right? So I think creating that, you very instinctively kind of did that, which I find fascinating.
Yeah, again, you're giving me a little bit too much credit with instinct and ideas as a founder story. This was it was not, oh, there's this big gap and I'm gonna fill it. I was so fortunate when we started getting together on a monthly basis. It started as just 30 beautiful nerds together, eating dollar pizza that I had bought and cut into 32. No one can cut a pizza into more slices than Jon Zanoff launching a free meetup. 700 slices in a single pizza.
Oh my god!
But
that's funny.
Lost the track. But the point is that it was just so rewarding. People loved it. We have to do this more often. This was only 2 hours. When's the next one? So again, I was tremendously fortunate. It wasn't this crystal ball. I see this happening.
Yeah.
The roadmap's going to be a conference and then FinTech Week and then that. No, it was just everyone in the community saying this was so eye-opening, so rewarding. How can we do more of this? And so, gosh, how could you say no to that?
Yeah. So you were really just feeling it out, and I also think that is a path. Right?
I wish you could have attended back in the day. It was a lot of when it was. Everyone really wanted to be there. Actually, your events, I feel like you actually have some of the same. Everyone there is so excited to be there. I think the challenge when everything became fintech is a bunch of people that didn't want to be in fintech were in fintech. And, you can sort of when people are, complaining about lines in Vegas, those are the same people are yeah, my boss told me to be here. I'm not really sure I'm here. That'll take the fun out of the room. But
right.
But your event where everyone's just so motivated and excited to share, that's what it's about.
So they started basically as monthly meetups with slicing up pizza, one slice of pizza for all 30 people. And then when did you properly decided, I will be a founder. I will call this empire startup. How did the transition from 30 people sharing a pizza to big stage?
If the question, Nicole, is when did you get your shit together and actually turn this into a real business? The answer is never. We're still the little conference a kid. So I was I was working at Goldman. And I was part of, they built a bunch of trading technology at Goldman, and eventually they were savvy enough to realize if you truly want to be best in class technology, you have to be bank agnostic. And so as part of a team that was going to pull out an insane amount of legacy technology and technical debt out of Goldman and start a company. And so I was at Goldman at the time, and they of all the things Goldman does well, it does compliance really well. And
I'm sure.
Yeah. And so just this is not a fish story. In email mentioning new startups, phone rings 1 minute later. Hey, this is Jeff. You don't know me. I'm part of the compliance group on the 6th floor. You just had a conversation about a private company, and I need to know why you're talking. So anyway, they're really good at compliance.
Wow.
They're so good at compliance. They told me, oh, this sounds interesting, you buying pizza for people, as long as you never use our name in any form or tell people you work here, you can do it. Now,
Great.
Imagine that. Yeah. Now today, great. I built the largest community of fintech entrepreneurs. I think their story would be a little bit different. But to answer your question, that year, the company from like attendance, from tickets grew something around 17,000%. And oopsies, I didn't go back to the compliance department and let them know that. I continued not to use their name in any public or private forum. But they rubber stamped it. I mean, and at that point, with that kind of growth, that was sort of the realization of like, you know, one, I'm finally doing, you know, I'm not just making wealthy people wealthier. I'm finally doing something really interesting. It is so rewarding to get sort of the feedback and help people with their careers or find investments or whatnot. And so that there was that growth change, and that's when we launched the San Francisco meetup and the San Francisco conference, and that was 2015.
Nice. When was the first one in New York?
Oh, it's always start in New York. I mean, first conference. I mean,
like your first big one.
So embarrassing. Like it's like you want to look back and be like, how cool was this? But no, I look back and be like, we just crammed like 50, 100 people into a 25-person conference room.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Called
it a conference. One of my favorite memories from that first year, everyone knows the Matt Harris. That would be the Bain Capital. Matt Harris gave some opening remarks. We went up to the front of the room. He's kicking off our first conference anywhere, and he goes, "Cool, where's my presentation?" I thought he was joking. I thought like he's a funny guy. Like I thought he's doing some stand up. He had emailed it to me at like 2 a.m. the night before. I'm like, brother. I'm like, I was during my 2 hours of sleep I've had in the last month. Anyway, luckily I think I signed into my Yahoo email very quickly at the stodgy podium and got him set. But anyway, it was just a handful of people, but everyone at the monthly meetups just said, we need more. So we gave them more, and it wasn't a lot of thought. I didn't do a financial model to see how it was going to be successful. Yeah. I think we made $8,000, which was an incredible amount of money for me at the time, like a GFY amount of money.
Yeah, you're like, we did it.
I'm a huge deal. Yeah, at the time. But yeah, just like 2 adjoining conference rooms and luckily in a fairly progressive law firm that saw the value in community. But that's how it started.
Wow. And then it just like the waterfall effect, if you will, like you just kept going and growing bigger as the need continued, right? I imagine.
Yeah. I mean, and the need, so we'll flash forward a little bit and, don't have to tell, but Empire has hosted over 400 events across North America. So, more pizza slices than than I can count. And I did the math a year ago, but founders that came to present at Empire Startups at the seed stage have gone on to raise close to $5 trillion. So, sorry, I said that wrong, or now worth $5 trillion. The number that they've raised is coincidentally in the $5 billion range, but an unbelievable amount of capital. The betterments, the lend ups, down the line, every interesting fintech startup, Socure. I mean, Johnny and Neil showing up, brand new with ironed on t-shirt logos in the very early days. Just super, super rewarding.
Yeah. What was it about New York specifically? Let's talk about our city a little bit.
Yeah.
What was it about New York specifically that made you feel like this needs to be a fintech hub?
Yeah.
We don't have to talk shit about other cities, I guess.
Well, that's why I came here today. Like my favorite suburb, Boston.
Yeah.
The cute little 7 fintech ecosystem in Toronto. No, okay. No shade on other cities. So, I think ultimately New York City is the fintech capital of the world. One, in spite of the city and in spite of regulation instead of because of it is one. I constantly joke, the number of regulators who can find their way onto an Amtrak to come up from DC is just staggeringly low. And we won't get into the, economic initiatives in New York City itself. We talked about not getting not getting too political there. But to your point, why is New Yorkers are open to playing the long game. They're open to serendipity. They're open to forging a relationship and meeting someone really smart without an agenda. And other ecosystems, and some of it is just as simple as the geography, as simple as the density of New York City facilitates that. When I try to contrast, and San Francisco has a lot of differences, of course, a lot of advantages, but simply the geography means that if you show up at an event, like, you have to have an agenda. You just fought traffic for an hour. Like, that's not what happened. New York, it can be like, I got to meet one interesting person. Will I do business with them? Absolutely not. But one interesting person, like, changed the way I think about something or inspired me to do something. Like, that is absolutely worth it. And so it's that is arguably brash, not arguably, as inarguably brash as us New Yorkers are.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, we're all in it together. We're ready to collaborate. There's a thirst for knowledge.
Yeah.
There's a thirst to step out of, at times, your day to day and your way of thinking, and to embrace new ideas. And it's that is truly what's unique about this. I mean, a lot of folks will point to the incumbents are here doing absolutely nothing great. The regulators, in theory, are here. Like, I don't really believe in that. I do believe that there's a tremendous amount of venture capital here, and especially, and arguably more importantly, angel investors and folks that have made some money in the industry and therefore are passionate and want to see others succeed and will help nurture and support those dreams. So I think that's critical. But overall, like, New York City is just about collaboration and more shade for Vegas, like the home of being transactional. Forging relationships in a non-transactional fashion, where, like, the two of us, we met 5 years ago. Would we ever do anything together? Like, maybe. Yeah. Wouldn't say no, but that is not we weren't just like, oh, let's get to know each other in case we do something. No, it was like, I love what you're doing, Nicole. Right. Cool. Come, like, let's hang out and share ideas. Like, that's what it was. That's what it was about.
Speak on my stage, be on my podcast. Yeah. Like, let's support each other. Let's do this. I think, to your point, there's an endless amount of ways that people are down to engage with each other. Yeah. And that does feel very specific to here. And it doesn't have to be cut any specific way, right? Yeah. Even with my community, I'm like, oh, you want to come in? And so many people ask me how to support me and how to do this. Yeah. I'm like, oh, great. Well, here are your marching orders. Like, I have 3 different ways. Pick one, right? Like, I have a million different ways that you could, be on stage or share my podcast or share the newsletter or buy a ticket to the event or do this or volunteer or, and I don't really care which way you want to do it. Just do it in the way that makes sense for you and is the most valuable to you. And that's going to bring value to me. And frankly, it's a decision of, do we just want to be in each other's lives? Like, do we just want to be in each other's orbit? We know how busy and crazy and nutso it is. But if you just continue to show up for each other, then that's it. Then you have a relationship, and it doesn't have to be too rigid of what that looks like. And I think that is something that is very special. Yeah. And especially, you said something earlier about the importance of our summits that we create. And then basically, I really see it as, like, the women I put on stage at the Fintech is Femme Leadership Summit, they are a blueprint, right? They are a blueprint to follow. They are like the masterclass in one certain way of entrepreneurship or corporate leadership, or, and that's important, to look at that level of the diversity that there is in how you can land in fintech, right? Or how you can build a successful career in the space. Those versions are pretty limitless. You just have to put yourself out there to hear from the different kinds of people that are going to tell you how to be able to do that, right? And then that is like the reinforcing of this community flywheel that I know I've experienced, right? Because I went to one of your summits, and then eventually spoke on stage at one of them, and then eventually did like one of your Jedi master classes, and which really put me out of my comfort zone. And then I grew, right? Like, I just grew and grew and grew. And then that really helped kickstart everything. So I think that's like an important element of what we're doing with New York Fintech Week. How are you feeling about Fintech Week 2025?
So, one of the, and I'm just going to continue to nerd out on community, but the one
Obviously.
thing in nerding out on community is it's an efficient beast. My finance nerds listening will sort of appreciate it, because all finance nerds try to talk about efficient markets. They turn too many things into some efficient market analogy, and I am one of those nerds. So I'm speaking to you, but it feels the needs in the community in 2010, 2011, when fintech wasn't a term, and you're literally just looking for anyone in the world with experience solving similar problems that you can learn from, versus today where let's be honest, there are days in New York where it's just exhausting. There's so many different events and activations happening. So it's a much, much different world, but the community evolves to different needs. And so we're clearly entering a phase. I won't talk about how long I want this phase to continue on, but of deregulation.
Yeah.
And that's going to have a pretty massive effect on consumers. And so, look to the community to understand, in the absence of guidance from regulators, or simply in the loosening of restrictions, what does that mean for the consumer? How do we protect consumers? How do we continue to act responsibly and with consumers? I mean, after all, this was about democratizing access to financial services and letting everyone, hopefully lead the best life they possibly can, in a financially low stress life. Like, how is that going to work moving forward? I mean, I don't remember a time in the last 15 years where I would have predicted as much change to what fintech look like. And so what I'm excited about are just all the new ideas.
Yeah.
All the tremendous new ideas. I'm obviously excited for the biggest Fintech is Femme summit ever. Nicole not paying me to say that, but I can't wait to see this every year. It's just better and better. And also bringing new voices that so many of us haven't heard from before. So I can't wait for things like that. But to the point about the community being efficient, as you look down that list of activations and events happening, that's a great indication of where, when I say community, the incumbents, the fintechs, the venture capitalists think the market is going, and where the market needs help, where entrepreneurship and innovation needs help. So it's just, to some extent, until it's over, we won't know, but that's what I'm excited to learn about.
I agree. I think in the time of transition, right? That's really what I think anyone in a community has in common, right? We're all just transitioning in some capacity, right? Whether you're an entrepreneur, dealing with the environment of raising and it being really, really hard, or you're in the corporate world trying to kind of climb up the ladder, or whatever it is you're doing, we're all trying to figure out this new transition. And so how do you come together I'm sorry, we're saying community so much. How do you come together as a community to unpack all of that, right? To move a bit faster in dealing with all of that, instead of thinking of it in a silo, because that's really when you can spiral and it can get a little bit more like, oh my God, what are we doing? I find going and having these events, it is pure clarity for me. It's like a moment where I'm, not only is my cup getting refilled, but then I'm getting to hear from these people on stage and talk to these people on stage and go, oh, okay, I'm going to be all right. Things are going to be okay, because this person's, fighting that battle, and this person's, putting out their best work to tackle the fact that we need to put up more to protect consumers in this environment, right? To basically fundamentally hang on to the core of what fintech is all about, right? Which is the access to financial services, which is the inclusion element, which is making sure we're leveraging the power of technology to enable more economic activity for more people. That is like what a lot of people are a part of this industry to do. And then on the other side of that, you can make great money yourself being a part of that narrative. Yay. Like,
if you find out how, let me know, Nicole, but
that's the point. We're all trying to figure out how. But it is. And so I think that, to me, is a huge value of why to buy that ticket, why to come to that thing, why to spend a week in New York, to basically have that immediate acceleration and clarity to your business or your career wherever you're at. I think you're going to find someone cool and interesting and smart in this city, in this fintech New York realm, that's going to help match that. I think I know I have.
Yeah. And if I can just continue to nerd out on the technology side, like there's some tailwinds around AI and what that means for content that I think makes these in-person engagements, like makes what you're doing and the content that you're curating so much more important than ever before. At the end of the day, these GPTs brings everyone's intelligence to the average.
Right.
And if you want to hear new ideas, it's not going to be OpenAI. It's going to be coming together and having candid and vulnerable conversations. So again, just more important than ever.
Absolutely. Speaking of nerding out on the technology side, we are also hosting our first ever FinTech Security Summit.
I can't wait.
So there's that. We're co-hosting with Frances Zelezny, the founder and CEO of Anonybit. She's wonderful and amazing. But that's our first time doing something like that. So we're actually having the Fintech is Femme Leadership Summit on our main stage at the Time Center, and then we'll have a second stage our first time. So not as many stages as you've had just yet. I don't know if we're going to get to that point.
As I say, not as I do.
Yeah. But we're going to stick with the 2 stages for a minute, and then we'll see how it goes. But I'm really excited about that because biometrics, fraud, security, cybersecurity, digital identity, that entire realm is, yes, of course, it's a part of the AI conversation, but it's talking about protecting consumers in a time. That's one element.
Fintech doesn't exist without fraud tools, and that trend. You don't need me. I won't be the first or the last person to say that trend's continuing. So I love that you're going all in there. Super, super smart. Yeah,
no, thank you. So as we wrap up, one of the things I really wanted to ask you is really what your advice is for us, for the fintech, for me as a founder, as an underdog, if you will.
Yeah.
An underdog founder, aren't we all? For me, for the Fintech is Femme team, as we take on the biggest risk and project of the company's history in kind of following your footsteps a bit with the Fintech is Femme Leadership Summit.
So congratulations. It's just that's why I'm here. That's why what I've done for the last 20 years of my career, supporting entrepreneurs. So I just love it. I love just taking a chance. You believe it should exist and you're putting it all on line. There's just no question you can today be rewarded financially somewhere else. But you say, the universe needs this, and so celebrate that. So, a little cliche, but you have to just celebrate even some of those decisions. That's the win. Regardless of the outcome, think of who's doing it, and you're going to come up with a very short list of people and just be super, super proud of yourselves. I think related, not many people, not many listeners, and this isn't please, maybe it is a call to action. Please pay Nicole. These events are so expensive. No one appreciates that. So I would say one thing over the years is, finance guy, I'm an engineer, getting too much into the financial model versus just creating a great product. When it's your own money, as I know it is with the two of you, and you're renting out this monster space, and they have the contract basically owns the rest of your lives. Yeah. It's easy to honestly you're too close to the problem. You get too sensitive, and when you're dealing with someone who may be unhappy, or I've found myself doing too much bean counting. Keep your eyes on just building something wonderful, and if you do, you're going to be able to monetize it. I know that's easier said than done over my on my pedestal, talking about you don't need money. That would be one. I'd say the other thing that Empire Startups, we spent a lot of time thinking about curating the audience. And in one regard, and this is absolutely true, we want to be the most inclusive community possible.
Right.
to new ideas, new people, new colors, new nationalities, everything. Like it's only going to drive innovation that much faster. But the value that you can add to the attendees, whether they know it or not, is helping put the people in the room they should be meeting again, whether they know it or not. And so, you know, the more headspace that you can put towards creating the perfect recipe of exactly who's in the room, not just the people who want to. At first, it's like someone wants to pay me, they're welcome in the room, and that's right. Fair. But what does that look like? What, you know, of all the constituents that we bring together, depending on the topic and the forum, having those sort of ratios. So anyway, so think of it as like evil scientists. You know, the more time you can think about concocting that perfect potion, the sort of and they won't know why they're so happy, but the happier the attendees will be.
Okay. Yeah. I love all three of those pieces of advice. And it is something I do feel a little like an evil scientist, even as I'm like curating the agenda, right? Because it is very, I am constantly thinking of like, what would I, if I'm sitting in the audience, want to consume, right? How would it feel to me? Would I enjoy this? Would I learn from this? What would I learn from this? Yeah. This person, this speaker, this fireside chat, this, you know, presentation on stage, which is cool. I think that it forces a lot of empathy for your audience and just focusing more on creating value. I think more people in the content realm or even just entrepreneurs, right, can think of that piece of advice of if you create something that you love, but then also feels very valuable to your client or your audience, then that's like the balance. That's the recipe. That's where the good stuff is.
Very hard. Yeah. And it's super hard to quantify. But at the end of the day, if you were to unpack why people become, you know, super fans, that's why.
Yeah, exactly. Amazing. Jon, thank you so much for being here.
I can't believe you invited such a nobody to this podcast. But
Mayor of Fintech. I mean, in New York City, I think, and thank you. Once again, I mean, I know. I'm sorry. I'm not to embarrass you, but thank you for creating this week, for keeping it alive and going. And I mean, we're gonna see you next year, 2026.
Yeah, without question.
Obviously.
Without question.
Obviously, teaser. But yeah, so thank you, and I'm excited. And next year we're gonna have to figure out to see what we're gonna do together.
We're blowing it out. We're blowing this Fintech is Femme thing out.
Yeah, exactly. It's gonna be nuts. I can only imagine.
It's not gonna be a Javits because that's where dreams die.
No, I agree. No Javits.
But it is going to be huge.
Yeah. All right.
Amazing.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Jon. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Humans of Fintech. If you loved it, be sure to hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time.